Fung, Christine served as the special advisor of the Fiji COP23 presidency team and was chief of staff of the Fiji high-level champion. With more than 20 years working experience in development cooperation in the Pacific Island region, Christine supported the development of national and sectoral policies, including facilitating multi-stakeholder engagement processes and closely engaged with local communities and indigenous peoples partners on the development and implementation of community-led projects in vulnerable Pacific Island communities. And she's currently Senior Technical Advisor of the Coping with Climate Change in the Pacific Island Region program of the German Society for Technology and Cooperation, the GIZ. Christine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. Just to give a very short statement on this very important topic of climate governance. I will largely be speaking from the perspective of vulnerable communities. And my story begins with a small school that is located on a very beautiful island here in Fiji. This school, the Yasawa High School, is on this island of Naviti in the Yasawa group. So up till last year, this school has largely been dependent on diesel generators. And last year they were installed with a hybrid solar system. Now, of course, as you can imagine, the huge impacts that such sustainable electricity brought to the community, better lighting for the students, more computer time. The school sports team, for instance, improved immensely just because that they could watch international sporting events. And of course, as you know, visually watching your sporting heroes ignites this passion within our sporting girls and boys. So this brought a huge impact to this small island. The lighting also provided safety for girls and women when wandering around the village. Lighting also provided as a beacon for sailors and for boatmen, for fishermen sailing at night back to their homes. This mitigation project brought with it strengthened resilience amongst this community. Now, while the impacts are many, we should also bear in mind that there were a lot of effort that went on behind it. And these efforts, of course, is founded on good governance. So what does this have to do with climate governance? Everything. So the success of these small community projects, they actually have a high reliance on good climate governance. So for instance, at community level, for this solar hybrid system to be implemented successfully and sustainably, the community needed to be engaged. For the high school, they needed to actually train 2 teachers specifically to manage this system. So they were trained on how to read and monitor the electricity usage, how to carry out basic troubleshooting, how to respond to the challenges brought about by storms, cyclones, how to manage community conflict over electricity rationing. And these are all new skill sets. So when we talk about climate governance at community level, we are actually talking about new governance instruments because we are introducing new technologies. Of course, we recognize that existing customs and tradition plays a role in the acceptance of these new technologies. But it is important to recognize that when we are introducing climate adaptation and mitigation technologies, often this means the development or the creation of new governance structures to specifically address this. So the Yasawa High School project was implemented by the national government, of course, and here also lies an interesting governance arrangement. The private sector was brought in to actually install the system, to train the community in using the system, and to also carry out follow-up maintenance. But the structure that was present at this national level helped support this. And this was through the Fiji Sustainable Energy Financing Program. Through this program, our local private sectors, they are supported to actually take out loans in order for them to set up their own sustainable energy and energy efficient businesses. So it is clear that the role that the private sector plays in addressing or in implementing climate action at the community level is quite important. But this role can only be strengthened or enhanced with the supporting national governance systems to encourage this growth within private sectors, especially our small private sectors in our small Pacific Islands. So climate governance at national level can direct and support market development towards these low emissions pathways and resilience development. Now, what exactly does this have to do with climate governance at the international level, at the negotiations? Well, I will just pick out a couple. In the context of the example that I'm just talking about is technology development and transfer and capacity development. Now, how well can these be structured? This has been on the table for years, ever since the beginning, actually. Now, however, technology development outside of the negotiation seems to be outpacing the negotiations itself. There is a lot of progress being made out there with our non-party stakeholder efforts. However, the negotiation seems to be not keeping up with these discussions. I know we have a lot of platforms within the negotiations to address this, the different technology meetings, etc. But how is this being really effective? Also, the capacity building at national level, there is a component on capacity building, national capacity building. However, how is this keeping pace with technology development if it is not keeping pace within the negotiations itself? And this, if you bring it right down to community level, is quite important. It is quite important in the sense that they need to learn, they need to have the capacities available and to have the best technology to serve them. In Yasawa High School, we have the solar hybrid system, but this is exposed to high cyclones, extreme events. The island is on the path of most cyclones coming through Fiji. So what technologies are there to cope with these extreme events brought about, of course, by climate change? Now, when I was in the Yasawa High School, we were quite impressed by the tenacity of the local communities. But of course, this does not do much in terms of the support that can be provided for them. And I'm just talking about one community here. There are a lot of communities scattered across the Pacific Ocean and other small island states that are facing the same problems. Now, this project also highlights the importance of donor coherence. The funding of this solar hybrid structure actually came from the EU EDF funding. The engagement of the private sector, the program that allowed the private sector to engage in such projects, this was supported by the World Bank Sustainable Energy Finance Program. So ensuring such coherence, such collaboration needs to be highlighted also in negotiations. It needs to, these practical on-the-ground experiences need to be showcased as a means of urging the process forward. I know this is well highlighted in the non-party stakeholder space, in the global climate action space, but transferring this across the negotiations where multilateral environment agreements and also multilateral financing agencies are engaged. This, I think, needs to also come out very clearly, and to support the governance relating to financing. When I was in Yasawa High School last month, I heard a lot of stories of students having to swim across, around coastlines during high tide in order to get back to the villages. Other students had to trek steep slopes, and during wet weather, they slip and slide down muddy slopes just to get to school. Now, my question is, where are the voices of these vulnerable children in the negotiations? I know that our youth are well represented in the negotiations, but when I am standing there in these villages, I just wonder how their voices can be heard to urge this, the component of social justice, etc., in the negotiations. But however, even though surrounded by hardship, I see in the bright eyes of these young children hope and optimism. And I'm pretty sure for those of you who also work in these vulnerable communities, you would see the same, the hope that just radiates from these children's eyes. So I would urge us that we keep this light of hope alive through robust climate governance. So yes, better climate governance matters a lot because it tells vulnerable communities that they also matter. Thank you.